Welcome everyone to the Committee of Adjustment meeting of October 2nd, 2018. My name is Ron Chatta, Committee Chair for today's meeting. This is a meeting of Committee of Adjustment. The Committee of Adjustment is composed of 5 citizen members who are appointed by Brampton City Council. The committee is authorized by the Ontario Planning Act to consider applications for minor variance from the provision of Brand zoning bylaw. The committee also consider applications for consent, sometimes referred to as land division applications, which include severing a new lot from an existing lot, a lot addition, easement, mortgages, or leases in excess of 21 years. My first request to ask those present to ensure that all cell phone and other electronic devices are turned off or placed on a non-audible mode during the meeting. I would like to introduce the committee members. To my immediate right, member Mr. Richard Nurse. To my immediate left, member Ms. Desiree Doppler. And my name is Ron Chatta, Committee Chair for today's meeting. And member Mr. Crouch sent his regrets for today's meeting. Seated at the table to the right side of the committee is Ms. Jeannie Myers, Secretary Treasurer of Committee of Adjustment. And the seated near the podium, we have city staff who will assist the committee today. I'll ask the staff members to make their introductions, please.
Crystal Walkie, the Manager of Development Services.
Kevin Freeman, Development Planner.
I'm Elizabeth Corzola, Manager of Zoning and Signed Bylaw Services.
Stephen Extra, Development Planner.
Daniel Watchorn, Development Planner.
Pascal Doucet, Heritage Planner.
Thank you. Before we consider today's application, the committee has some procedural matters to take care of. The first is adoptions of minutes meeting held on September 11, 2018. The minutes of the previous meeting has been presented in today's agenda. So, committee members, any questions, concerns? If not, then seeking a motion to proceed. Motion to approve the previous meeting held on September 11, 2018 has been put forward by Mr. Nurse, seconded by Mr. Doffer. All in favor? Approved. The next item is declaration of interest. Does any member have a declaration of pecuniary interest to declare on any matter being discussed today? Seeing none, now we move on to withdrawals and deferral. We have a written request by any applicant or agent or property owner wishes to withdraw their application or any deferral. Mr. Walker?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, staff, and the public. My name is Andrew Walker. I'm a principal planner with Gagnon Walker Domes. I'm here on behalf of my client, Chahad Hari Sharma, and Jana Mishra and Meenu Sharma, registered owners of the property at 11043 Heritage Road. We had filed an application under A18-151 for 2 variances, being a temporary place of worship within an existing detached garage and a parking in the rear yard. On August the 10th, we filed an interim controlled bylaw exemption request, and it was our hope that that would have been dealt with by staff prior to the report deadline for the Committee of Adjustment. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. In discussions with Kevin Freeman on September the 21st, as there was no response to that point, we both agreed that the best course of action would be for a deferral, thereby allowing policy staff the appropriate time to provide their response. We filed a deferral request, which is a letter that's before you today, on September the 26th. We had originally requested an indefinite deferral. On September 27th, Kevin and I had further discussions. He had indicated to me that, or rather, on the 27th, sorry, that the staff report had a recommendation for October the 23rd. Just the prior day, very late in the day, we received the response from policy staff. For that, and in discussions with Mr. Freeman, I had indicated that perhaps November 13th might be more appropriate as for the date for deferral, given that we require some appropriate time to do a fulsome review of staff's response, consider any options that may be present to my client. And then in conjunction with that, the filing deadline for the November 13th hearing is October the 16th. Whereas the filing deadline for the October 23rd meeting was September the 25th, which was prior to even receiving the response from policy staff. If there is any changes that may occur with our application, the October 16th filing deadline would provide appropriate time should there be a need for any recirculation of any notices. So the November 13th is a more appropriate date as opposed to October 23rd.
Okay, sure, no problem. Committee members, any questions to the agent so far?
I'm not sure if that's November 13th.
Okay, we'll hear from staff. Ms. Myers, any circulation issue?
Mr. Chair, given that the applicant is requesting November 13th, there wouldn't be any issues with recirculation of public notices.
Okay. Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? None? For the record, we have two letters, one by Sandra and Renee Latender, 11046 Heritage Road, showing concerns about this application. Second, we have Joanne and John Duane, address 2440 Wellness Drive, Brampton, sharing their concerns about this application here. Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can confirm that staff are supportive of the applicant's request that the application be deferred to the November 13th committee hearing date.
Okay, so if no further business, I assume, Mr. Nurse, your motion for November 13th, so this application to be deferred on November 13th, seconded by Ms. Duffler. All in favor? This is deferred to November 13th.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other request by anyone else for deferral or withdrawal?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have an application under file A18099. It's for property at 98 Wentworth Court under the ownership of 693316 Ontario Limited. I just want to advise the committee that this application should have been listed on the agenda for today's hearing, October 2nd. You will recall back in July there was some discussion on this application, at which time committee made a decision to defer this application to October 2nd. In the interim, staff received a request to allow for a further deferral, not recognizing that it was a decision to be made by the committee. So we've not been, we won't be able to consider this application on its merits today because public notices have not been circulated. So we're here today recognizing on public record that this application should have been on the agenda and to determine which hearing date we were proceeding to.
Okay, so is there any applicant or agent present for this property here? 90 Wentworth? None? So on which day it need to be the next?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the applicant had, through staff, requested to defer this application until further notice. It may be in your best interest to speak with planning staff for a determination on when this application will proceed.
Staff, could you please make your comments about 90 Wentworth?
Mr. Chair, if we may bring the application back for the December 4th hearing date. The applicant has recently submitted a site plan and will have an opportunity to go through a round of review with that process and then bring it back for December 4th.
Okay, so December 4th, do we need a motion, Ms. Myers, for?
We do need a motion on the floor and have that motion carried in order to list this application for, if it is staff's pleasure, to bring it back for December 4th.
Okay, so we need a motion to include 90 Wentworth Court to add on the agenda on December the 4th.
Motion to.
Motion by Mr. Nurse, seconded by Ms. Doppler. All in favor? This application has been included on the agenda on the December the 4th. Okay, so any other requests for deferral or withdrawal? None. For those unfamiliar with the Committee of Adjustment procedure and process, I would like to give a brief explanation and scope. Following some procedural matter that we have already undergone, the Secretary-Treasurer will call the applications by announcing the application number, the name of the applicant, and address of the property. Subject to the application, the applicant or authorized agent representing the applicant will then come to the podium, say their name and addresses for the record, and then present the application. I request that you reserve any questions or comments pertaining to the staff report until after planning staff has had an opportunity to present. If there is anyone in attendance who wishes to speak to a particular application, you will be given the opportunity to do so when the application is presented. Any decision made here today may be appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal. Previously, the appeal process was dealt with through the Ontario Municipal Board. However, the province has introduced new legislation in the form of Bill 139, which came into force on April 2018. Appeals received in the City Clerk's office associated with minor variance and consent application will be processed and forwarded to LPAT, as they were previously processed and sent to OMB. This process may be commenced with the Secretary-Treasurer by filing a completed appeal form and filing fee within the prescribed 20 days appeal period. Information pertaining to the appeal process may be obtained by contacting the Secretary-Treasurer within the City Clerk's office. Now we move on to new consent applications.
Calling application B 18023, Bannon Enterprises, Inc. The property is located at 5107 Mayfield Road.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of committee.
Your name and address, please.
My name is Beth Halpenny. I reside at 35 Cameron Crescent, Toronto, M4G1Z9. This morning, I'm representing the Brampton Area 48 Landowners Group, Inc., in connection with the severance application, which is before you.
Okay.
So up on your screen is a context map that shows where this application is. It's within the Countryside Villages Secondary Plan area, which spans from Bramalea West Road in the west to Airport Road in the east, Mayfield Road in the north, Countryside Road to the south. I represent the Brampton Area 48 Landowners Group, who have entered into a purchase and sale agreement with the owner of the subject property, the Vannons, who are here today, should there be any questions of the owners at a later point in time. And I just would like to provide a little bit of context as to the reason that we're here before the committee today. So if you could, Kevin, just look at the next drawing.
Sorry, so is this microphone is working at the podium? Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yes. The Brampton 48 Landowners Group represent all participating landowners within the Countryside Villages Secondary Plan area. The Vannons are a non-participating owner in this group and currently own and operate a nursery operation on the property, which is about 10 acres in area. Has a frontage of approximately 70 meters on Mayfield Road. In the Countryside Villages Secondary Plan, there is a requirement, just for background of the members of the committee, that when developers move forward to develop plans of subdivision, there are certain requirements that the developers group deliver certain components of infrastructure before the lands can proceed to development. And in this case, it was a requirement of the phasing and sequencing plan, is what they refer to it as, that the participating owners deliver a key piece of road infrastructure called Inspire Boulevard, which is the road that is shown midway on the screen. That road goes through the Vannon property, who I said the Vannons were non-participating owners and are not intending to move forward for development at this time. The secondary plan itself made provisions for the city to be able to expropriate the road component of this, the road component of the Vannon parcel, to allow this road to be delivered. But over a 2+ year period, the city of Brampton has not moved forward on that process. So the landowners have entered into discussions for quite some time now in trying to come to some agreement to purchase this land from the Vannons, and we have now an accepted purchase and sale agreement, which is conditional upon the approval of the severance. And what that does is it allows the landowners group to deliver the key piece of infrastructure, which actually has to be built before the first plan of subdivision is registered within this block. And when I say within this block, it's anywhere from Bramalea to Torbram Road. So it's a very important piece of infrastructure. We are in a very critical timeline, so it's important to be at this committee meeting here today because we're scheduled to close before the end of the year. So there is some urgency, and as a result, I'd like to speak to some of the conditions, if I may. I'm going to get you, if you don't mind. I'm going to speak to, not necessarily in order, if I may, just in terms of some of the conditions. And I will say I have reviewed the conditions. I have concern with 2 of them, which I'd like to address here today, if I may.
Sorry, you can bring those conditions now, or maybe once we hear the staff, and then we can discuss after. It's entirely up to you.
I can continue with my presentation and talk
Please go
about the
ahead.
conditions, and I have actually, on one instance, Mr. Chair suggested revised wording for conditions, which I've given to the Secretary Treasurer. So, first of all, not necessarily the plan that's in front of you, but the first condition here is prior to the issuance of certificate, the owner gratuitously convey all necessary easements for access, servicing, or other easements as may be required by the city, the region, or utilities through the severed lands in favor of the retained lands. I understand why this condition would typically be there, but the landowners group is purchasing this property for the purpose of future development. There is no intent to develop that property today for a single-family residence, so there's no need today to have services. It does have frontage on existing Inspire Boulevard, which is built right up to the west boundary, so the access is there, which allows it to satisfy the requirements of the Planning Act to be considered a severed parcel. So I don't believe this particular condition is applicable here today because we don't need to develop or service or obtain access to the severed lands. That will be obtained when the surrounding lands develop. So I would like to ask this committee to consider at this time that condition number 1 is not a requirement today in respect to this application. I'd like to talk to condition number 2. On the screen here is a copy of the conceptual plan, which was approved by Council in 2016. And you will see that it's, Kevin, maybe you could just point to it because there's a roundabout on Inspire Boulevard, which, right there, thank you very much, Kevin,
Okay.
which is anticipated at the intersection of a future north-south road coming through the Van parcel whenever it does develop within Inspire Boulevard. And the city has imposed this condition, but we have in fact had meetings and conversations in the preceding weeks to this meeting today to discuss how that condition can be satisfied. So we have prepared, I'm sorry, there's another, I'm sorry, this next drawing. Thank you very much, Kevin. So we have prepared and provided to planning and the traffic services staff. It's very faint, I see. Not quite, there's a reflection of the shiny paper. We have prepared, oh, that was better. We've prepared a demonstration plan to satisfy the city that the future roundabout can be delivered by the landowners at a future point in time when Inspire is delivered. There was concern initially by staff that perhaps the limit of the development, limit of the lands that were to be severed would not accommodate the roundabout. But we have provided this information, and I believe through Planning Department, I'm hoping there's been some communication to say that perhaps this condition has been satisfied already. I'm turning to staff. Is there some, can we actually eliminate that condition at this time? Okay, so there'll be a recommendation, it sounds, from staff. Okay. I'd like to speak to the last condition, and it's that satisfactory arrangements shall be made with the applicant and the Region of Peel Public Works Department regarding the required land dedication along the lands fronting Regional Road Mayfield 24. And in this respect, Kevin, I will ask you to pull up the first photograph, if you may. So Mayfield Road, and I understand that the committee members do take visits or go out to see the application, subject application properties, I'm not sure. But just for context, Mayfield Road is under reconstruction for its ultimate 6-lane cross-section. It has been underway now for well over a year. And so when we received comments from the Region of Peel, it asked for as a condition of the severance, that the additional road widening, daylighting triangles, and a 1-foot reserve be taken from the Van and parcel as a condition of this consent, which is what's implied by condition 7. And I'll say that because I've met now with regional staff once I was aware that this was a condition. And in the time frame of which they have to comment on these applications, they can't delve into the details. They give the standard requirements which they are allowed to ask because this is a Planning Act application. So I totally understand why they would be asking for widening at this point in time. But having had the more detailed dialogue with staff in a meeting yesterday and some further conversations today, and understanding that Mayfield Road has basically been complete in terms of its full construction in front of this property, there's no need for a requirement for additional widening. There is an official plan requirement that says the region can take a further 2.75 meters of land at a future time for some road widening 10, 15, 20, 50 years from now, if Mayfield is ever widened beyond 6 lanes. But today it is at its ultimate section. So we don't believe it's a requirement. It should be made a requirement for that reason, but also because the Area 48 landowners group have purchased the south property of the south portion of the Vannon property, as I showed earlier, as the severed lands, and have no ability to control the Vannons deeding additional lands to the region. And I will add that the Vannons have given up considerable land in the past to allow this road construction to take place. They own and operate a nursery operation on this property today, have for some time, and want to continue that operation into the future, which is why they're not a participating landowner in the developers group. So the last condition is not necessary given the status of the completion of Mayfield Road construction today, and that we do not have, as a landowners group, the ability to deliver that widening to the region as a condition of approval. So there are a number of photos. That just shows, that's from the Vannon, just a little east of the Vannon's property looking east. This is a property taken from the picture taken from their entrance into the nursery. And as you can see, the ultimate hydro poles are already in place. There's another drawing I'll point to in a minute, but the curb is already poured on the south side of the Mayfield Road paved section. And the region has had to accommodate some drainage here. So you'll see there's a ditch. I think this is a very good photograph to illustrate what's required, because road drainage from a regional road cannot go on to the adjacent owner's property. So the region has had to put an interim ditch here that collects drainage from the Mayfield Road. The region, when I spoke with them yesterday, wanted to make sure that they had all the widening that they needed to satisfy what is their typical standards for grading the boulevards, for instance, offsets of poles. Well, the poles are already there, so we know that's not an issue. Pardon me. So in my discussion with the region, what they have committed to do is that they would take a very specific look at the section as it exists in front of the Vannon property, which is this section right here, and satisfy themselves that this interim condition is sufficient to meet their requirements on an interim basis. And I would suggest it is, because if they were to take more land, as you can see, the elevation of the Vannon property is substantially lower. Taking additional land away today does not negate the need for a ditch. So that will be an interim condition until somebody purchases the Vannon property and comes forward to develop that property. So I have actually, through the clerk, suggested an alternate condition. Ideally, we would love this condition to be struck, but we realize that it has to be satisfied that the road functions, and I think the fact that the road is there today illustrates that it functions satisfactorily without the need for additional widening. But the region has undertaken that they would take a specific look at it and confirm that there is no additional requirement for land at this time. They recognize that there is, through a future Planning Act application, an ability to take the additional land for widening many years from now, and which they will do at that time. So that completes my presentation and my request in terms of context, why we're here, what concerns we have, some changes we'd like. The Vannons are here if you have any questions of them, and I'm prepared to answer any questions. Thank you.
Sure. We'll ask when we feel it's necessary. Committee members, any questions so far to the applicant? I'll come to you, sir. No question so far?
No.
Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Please come forward. Your name and your address, please.
Mr. Chairman, council members, or committee members, thank you. I'm Randy Nielsen, Neilson, at 37 Gower Crescent here in Brampton. What is it? L6R0Y1. Got it. I'm a friend of the Vannons and have been asked to just give you a little context from their perspective.
You're here for the friendship. That's good.
I am. They have lived on the property for now 50 years.
Okay.
Their parents had purchased the property to establish a business that they've carried on continuously. So they now live on the property with their aged mother, who is still very active in the business. They wish to continue their way of life. They have already given in excess of 20 meters of their parking lot and display area frontage in order to expand Mayfield Road. And unfortunately, that's left them with a very tight parking area and display area, so they're not able to accept any more reduction in the front yard. They recognize, excuse me, they recognize the need for Inspire Boulevard to go ahead for the progress of the city, and so they have decided to enter into this agreement that you're looking at here today. The condition or proposed condition even for a delay would unduly affect them in that they must move 39 trees in order for the proposed Inspire Boulevard, and that only happens in the fall of the year due to their busiest season in the spring. So they would respectfully request that the committee would agree to go ahead with the severance without any conditions if possible. That would remove any doubt and would allow them to go with their fall work.
Okay, sure. We'll consider that. Let's hear what staff has to say about the entire discussion.
Thank you, ma'am.
And then if you feel you can always come back and we can discuss further.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Anyone else in the audience wishes to speak on this application? None? Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff have reviewed the application against the criteria outlined in the Planning Act and are recommending approval subject to conditions of approval. Now, before I get to the conditions, I'd just like to speak to some of the amendments to the conditions. Condition number 2, as Ms. Halpney had mentioned, satisfactory arrangements have been made with the Supervisor of Traffic Planning of the Public Works and Engineering Department to review a conceptual design drawing that is acceptable. So staff recommending that condition 2 be eliminated. And condition number 4, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee will render the approval null and void. In correspondence that we've had with our Secretary Treasurer, from what I understand, this cannot be a condition of approval for a consent application. So staff are recommending that condition number 4 be removed. So with that said, staff are recommending a total of 6 conditions of approval. Condition number 1, that prior to the issuance of the certificate of the Secretary Treasurer to the owner, that the owner shall gratuitously convey all necessary easements for access, servicing, or other easements as may be required by the city, the region, or utilities through the severed lands in favor of the retained lands. Condition number 2, please note that staff would also like to include a condition that's recommended from the region of Peel. That the final approval of the application that the application be approved to the satisfaction of the Credit Valley Conservation Authority. Condition number 3, that the final reference plan reflect the land area to accommodate Inspire Boulevard to the satisfaction of the Supervisor of the Traffic Planning section of the Public Works and Engineering Department. Condition 4, that a Secretary Treasurer certificate fee shall be paid in the amount current at the time of the issuance of the Secretary Treasurer certificate. Condition 5, approval of the draft reference plan as applicable shall be obtained at the Committee of Adjustment Office, and the required number of prints of the resultant deposit reference plan should be received. And lastly, condition 6, that satisfactory arrangements shall be made between the applicant and the region of Peel Public Works Department regarding the required land dedication along the lands fronting Regional Road 14, Mayfield Road. From what I understand in recent correspondence with the region of Peel, just as recent as this morning, that they've not yet had an opportunity to review the plan in accordance with the Mayfield Road design drawings to confirm the land acquired to date. So the region has indicated that they are willing to remain flexible in terms of the amount of land necessary to achieve the appropriate road design and clear this requirement as necessary.
Okay. So basically, what staff is recommending to eliminate the recommendation or condition number 2 for the roundabout setup, right?
Correct.
And the failure to comply? No.
That's the elimination of condition 2 and condition 4.
And also staff is recommending adding another condition?
And that a condition be added as condition number 2, that the application be approved to the satisfaction of the Credit Valley Conservation Authority.
Do we have comments from Credit Valley Conservation Authority in this package or no? I don't think so. There are some concerns by the applicants regarding the property facing Mayfield, the top portion. What's staff's opinion about that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did receive an email this morning from the manager of planning at the region and requested that they have time to evaluate this. They can work with the applicants in the next couple of months before the property closes to determine if any land is required. But the email of this morning said at this point they are unable to waive the condition. So we support the region in that request and request that the applicant work with the region to clear that condition along with the others in the next couple of months. We believe that's achievable.
So you wish to add something? Can you please come forward so we can, as you may have heard, the staff's opinion, they are not in favor to waive the condition number 1 as you requested. You mentioned there are some modifications you're offering. Like, do you have that draft condition with you, or?
Not to replace condition 1, Mr. Chair, but what I could suggest, because as I mentioned in my words earlier, there are no requirements for easements for servicing or for access because there is no plan today to develop the severed lands as a single property today. And the way this condition is worded, we're to convey something. I think if we can add something to that says, or that the authorities, city, would be satisfied that no such easements are required at this time, because right now, there's no way to satisfy that condition, and somebody needs to say yes they are or yes they aren't required. And I can tell you today, none of this is actually required. So maybe there's some suggested wording that staff could add, or that staff be satisfied that no such easement are required through the severed lands to service the retained lands.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the condition currently is worded as may be required, so I believe that does give some flexibility to determine that those are required. It was a condition requested by our engineering department.
So who determines, if I may ask through you, Mr. Chair, whether or not they are required in a timely fashion, given, as Mr. Nielsen had said, we're under a very tight time frame to satisfy these conditions to be able to close by the end of the year?
And through you, Mr. Chair, we can provide the appropriate staff name to the applicant in order to address the condition.
Can it be done expeditiously?
I believe we've demonstrated in this process, having received your plan only a few days ago, that we are able to move things expeditiously.
Thank you. Okay, that's good. On condition 7, which is the one that I am concerned with, and other comments have expressed that there is simply not the ability today to convey additional lands. As Mr. Nielsen has said, the Vannons have already had lands expropriated from that parcel. It's substantially constrained their access on a very busy operation in the spring because it's a nursery operation, and a lot of people were doing their planting in the spring, so they need to have parking. That's essential. The taking of additional land would actually compromise their business operations today. So the wording, and I could maybe suggest, and I've given this to the Secretary Treasurer, as an absolute backup. The preference, as I said, is to have this struck because we know today. But the region is looking at this today, and as I say, they can look at a very specific section in front of this property. The pure fact that this road is built today shows that they're satisfied. But this wording of a condition, if it absolutely had to be, says all they're doing is confirming that the interim condition is satisfactory and that they acknowledge that they still have the ability to take the widening at a future point in time when another development application comes forward on this property. And that would leave the Vannon lands today intact. It doesn't require us to satisfy a condition that we actually can't satisfy today, and leaves the ability for the region to address this at a later point in time when that land's developed.
So you're suggesting this condition instead of condition number 7?
To replace 7. Ideally, I think that condition 7 shouldn't be there, and that's up to the determination of this committee. But as a backup, there's another wording of a condition that could be considered to replace condition 7. it's up to the determination of the committee.
Okay, so I have a question to the staff, with due respect to the staff. So this piece of land, the nursery located right next to the commercial block we have, right? So in the future, whenever, if this property to be developed, there's a proposed road from Inspire Boulevard going north and south to Mayfield, right? Then only this will come into an effect. In that case, do we still need daylight triangle and the property region need more property, or we need to go ahead with that hard condition, especially when they are running the business there? Like, but the other thing is, it's only coming forward if ever they are going to develop, or if city feels this road has to be put together, and then there might be some expropriations.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the region has corresponded with the city that this is the time they'd like to consider it. The applicant is working with the region to determine if it is necessary now or at a later date. Typically in consent applications is the time when you can acquire land in accordance with regional policies that set out the ultimate road limit. I believe the applicant can work with the region to address this in a little while. The region did respond this morning that they will review this as quickly as possible. Our preference is obviously to keep the region's condition as is and ask the applicant to address it in the short term.
Chair, I find the proposed condition 2 in place 7 workable.
By the staff, the seventh.
By the agent.
Okay.
Condition that we're looking at.
Okay.
And maybe condition 1 could begin with, if and when required.
So, member Mr. Nurse suggested a couple of changes in the two conditions, condition number 1 and condition number 7. In the condition number 1, if and when required, and the condition number 7 as presented by the applicant. What's the staff's opinion on that?
I believe that the change to condition number 1 would be satisfactory. As far as condition number 7, we do have to stick with the region's original comment to us, which was as written in the conditions.
In the condition number 1, it already says as may be required. So if we are adding if and when required, that is pretty much the same thing in my opinion. But it's a good suggestion by Mr. Nurse. Another thing to the applicant, since the landowner group and the property owner, Vannon Enterprises, both the parties are here?
Yes?
And your closing is when?
December 6th, 19th.
So there should be some extension in the closing and work with the region. That is something you can work. Amendment to the agreement of purchase and sale.
It's taken a long time, Mr. Chair, to get to this point. The discussions have been ongoing for a year plus 3 years. And there's a file like this in the conversations back and forth with the Vannons. The landowners have reached an arrangement. I think it would be important to the Vannons to be able to satisfy these conditions so that we can close when we committed to close.
I fully understand. So, Ms. Duffler, please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, question to the staff. Both number 1 and number 7, would those apply once a site plan application is made? So in other words, we're trying to address this now as the land is being severed, but if there's an application submitted for site plan approval, would these conditions not also come forward?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Site plan approval on these plans may not go first. As the applicant indicated earlier, the Inspire Boulevard connection is required to open up the entire block. So development may happen further east before this particular section happens. So that's why those requirements are there at this point in time.
Sorry, a few more questions.
Go ahead.
In terms of the region has expropriated land along Mayfield, it would be my assumption that they have expropriated what they require. So I'm listening to what the applicant is saying, and I'm recognizing had that not occurred, we would sit here and it would be a rather challenging question to ask of us, but the expropriation has already taken place. It doesn't seem to make sense if the development is going to occur to the south. I understand that everybody wants to make sure they look after whatever they possibly can when there's an opportunity, but the expropriation has occurred. My question would also be on the neighboring properties on either side. Has there been a further expropriation than what has been taken from the Vannon property?
Through Mr. Chair, I can't speak to the other pieces, and if expropriation did occur to meet their current standards, that may be applicable, but it may not be for the long-term standards. The applicant has been in contact with the region. The region's emailing us at 7:11 this morning, so obviously they're working with the applicant on this, and we would request that they continue to work on that and address the condition. Number 7 could be amended as per the previous one, if and when required, to add that so that it does give flexibility to the applicant to work with the region.
I think the applicant had a comment.
Please.
Oh, through you, Mr. Chair, to answer that question. Yes, the expropriations have taken place to the ultimate 50-meter right-of-way, because I'm personally involved in some other lands further east of here as well. And so they were taken from the owner before we purchased the property. And we are now going through a planned subdivision on that particular property. This is right at the corner of Torbram and Mayfield. And the region has asked, as a condition of draft approval, that the additional 2.75 meters be conveyed to the region through that process. So they had what they needed. They expropriated what they needed. They've built the road today, which shows they had what they needed. And so if they want to plan for future expansions down the road, the ability still exists through a future Planning Act application, of which this will be a plan of subdivision, because there is a road within it. It will not be a site plan application. It has to be a plan of subdivision under the Planning Act. And with that, they will then obtain the daylighting triangle that's required for that intersection. But you don't need any of that if there is no road. And the other request, I'll just say in the region's letter, it's not in the conditions per se, but it's implied by virtue of the fact of the region's letter, is it talks about a reserve across the entire frontage of the property. That would curtail access, to the Vannon's residence, because there is a residence on that property today, on one access driveway to the west, and the access to the nursery operations. So it just further serves to demonstrate that to ask for those at this point in time is just not appropriate. The road is built, and the condition should probably be struck in its entirety, but this is a compromise to satisfy the region.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to refer to it as the Vannon property. The property is to be retained. There is provision for a north-south road to be built at some point in time. So there's no timeline for that.
It's not part of the phasing and sequencing plan, only Inspire Boulevard is.
And where would it be noted that there's a road that's going to be built north-south?
It's through you, Mr. Chair.
It's not in the conditions.
No, if we could pull up, Kevin, if you don't mind, the secondary, or the block plan. It would have been probably the second drawing here. And I'm going to ask you, Kevin, once again, if you could just point it. So we pointed out to the roundabout, which is there, and the road is in a council-approved block plan. So when somebody purchases the Vannon property down the road, it will be a plan of subdivision. You'll see there's high density. That darker yellow is a medium-high density future residential development and a road. So that'll be a plan of subdivision. Planning Act application, the region can take that requirement as a condition of that application.
And one last question.
Please go ahead. No
Mr. Chair. Is there a plan for developing the Vannon property in the near future?
They have maintained a nursery operation there for some time, as Mr. Nielsen had said, and they continue to operate into the future. So there's no immediate plan to sell, no immediate plan to develop and to sell that at that time. And if you ready? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so one question, as I have seen some gestures, site plan or plan of subdivision?
It could go as a plan of subdivision if it's a municipal road. It could go a plan of condominium if it's a private road. At this point in time, we do not have those finer details of what's proposed there. Certainly, the block plan indicates a road with a higher density, but we have had no discussions on what is going to happen on that at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. Please go ahead, no problem.
Through you, Mr. Chair. We find ourselves in a challenging position. My question would be, we seem to be, all parties seem to be working well together. There seems to be an issue with items number 1 and 7. It may be something that we can work through in terms of wording as we sit here, but we're not the experts. We're here to look at the details and the information that's given to us and come to a decision. My question would be, we understand and recognize that there's a deadline, December 19th. For me personally, I would prefer that this gets worked out between the parties. And my suggestion would be, or wondered whether, if we defer this for one meeting, whether you could work through this.
Through you, Mr. Chair, deferring this for a month just further reduces a very tight timeline to satisfy, right now, 6 conditions after staff have made their comments, 6 conditions of consent. So it involves preparation of reference plans, preparation of certificates, meetings with the region. Region has to first satisfy themselves that what they've built today meets their requirements. But as I said earlier, the fact that they built it should be demonstration enough. But understanding the concerns that have been expressed, which is one of the reasons I suggested an alternate wording to that condition that this committee could approve. It says that the region is working with us. It also implies that it's built and that anything further they can take through a subsequent application. If you look at the wording, I don't know whether, maybe Kevin will just maybe put that up again if you don't mind.
Perhaps we provide some wiggle room. Condition 7 could start with if and when required. Would that be perhaps the to indicate that they want people for that? If the agent agrees to that, I think we can move forward. Leave condition 1 as is, but just modify number 7 to if and when, if it provides the wiggle room, you're good to go.
Could we just maybe just read it together so they understand? Would that be helpful? Or you could,
Which one? The one on the display?
I don't know, does it appear on your screen? You're looking
It
at me.
does.
Okay,
It does.
all right, so you got it there.
Based on the discussion, what I come to conclusion, and it's my personal opinion, right now the property owner has no intentions to develop sometime near future. Region already took whatever it was required, they felt at this time, about this future road going north to south. It might even come to and exist even if this property is ever going to be developed. So that's my understanding at this point. We are just going into circles about this, and part of me is saying to go ahead with as you are proposing for the sake of rest of the entire block, but at the same time what we feel, if all parties are here, the owners from nursery and yourself, you're representing the group, if we put a timeline and defer to a meeting or two, we are not going to defer for indefinite time. If we defer to with a timeline, and meantime you can work with the region. If not, then we will be here again and we'll be making the decision. That's an option if both the parties wish to discuss at this point. Because please keep in mind, if we are going to make a decision today, which we have no problem, it could go either way.
We can't risk a deferral.
No?
Absolutely can't risk a deferral. That's another month. We're already in October. That puts it in November. I would have 5 weeks to satisfy everything. So we can't even commence the certificate, the reference plan, until all of this is to bed. And you have to go through an appeal period as well. So by the time you defer another month and then you go through an appeal period on the decision, you're talking another 4 weeks by the time notice is out and appeal is over. So absolutely a deferral is not appropriate, and we would ask that it not be deferred, please. Decision be made today.
So through you, Chair, staff, you indicated that you might be, for condition number 7, you might be satisfied with an if and when. Is that still good?
That would be correct.
And to the agent, if number 7 were softened up to begin if and when required, would that help?
Oh, I thought, through Mr. Chair, I thought the if and when was pertaining to condition 1.
No. We leave 1 as is. It's number 7. So if and when required, satisfactory arrangements. Because I think it gives some wiggle room to you, and staff seem to
Be fine with that.
be fine with it.
But it's the when. We may not be the applicant when the when is upon us.
Right, but there's no when being defined. It's wide open.
When Inns wants to develop the property.
That's fine. So if the wording captures it that way, when the Vanden property proceeds to development, absolutely.
Well, we are we are not there to put
Through you,
that.
Mr. Chair, I'd like all parties to consider that we're proposing wording for a condition that must be cleared
Yeah.
before the issuance of the certificate of the Secretary Treasurer. So keep that in mind when you're talking about development of the Vanden lands, which there is no proposal for development of the Vanden lands at this time.
So, any other discussion, if any question by you, Ms. Doffler, at this point?
just a comment. I think it appears that we're all trying to work with wording. I think the concern of the applicant is having to produce something within a time frame, whereas my thinking is we're talking about wording. We want to protect what the region may have in mind, and we can't speak for them here. We recognize that they've already expropriated quite a bit. The city's not able to deal with this. Obviously, they don't represent the region either. But we don't want to impose restrictions on the sale of land for something that may or may not occur in the future and that may or may not fall under a site plan application. So the suggestion here is if we defer this for one meeting, it would be a matter of seeking the appropriate wording for both items 1 and item 7, as opposed to, as item 7 says, satisfactory arrangements. The arrangements mean something more than finding the appropriate wording.
Through you, Mr. Chair, rather than a deferral, because that is a concern for reasons I've suggested, perhaps the if required will help, because in the process of the next few weeks, the discussions are happening with the region and they're looking at it, and I'm pretty comfortable that they're going to determine that no further land is required, given the fact that the road's built. So the if required allows that certain degree of flexibility, but the way it's worded, it says the Vans have to give land, which we don't have the ability to. So if that's the compromise, is that if required?
To both the conditions, 1 and 7?
Yes.
So you're in agreement if we are here to proceed with as presented, both the conditions, condition number 1 and condition number 7, if and when required, and you're in agreement that that is acceptable to you?
As a last resort, yes.
Thank you. Staff? If and when for condition number 1 and condition number 7?
That would be satisfactory.
And through you, Mr. Chair, if I just can confirm, are we striking as may be required in condition 1 and replacing with if and when required?
I think that's the,
Is that the intent of the
I
wording?
think that should be the proper wording, because it already says in condition number 1, as may be required. So instead of as may be required, it should be read if and when required. And condition number 7 to be start with if and when required, satisfactory arrangements. Is that correct, staff?
that's how I would position it.
Okay, so if no further discussion after this lengthy discussion, looking forward to a motion to proceed.
Motion to approve with the amended conditions, 1 and 7, wording change to if and when required, and number 2 stricken, number 4 stricken, and then there is a number 3 condition with respect to the CVC approval.
Okay.
Hear back here, sorry. Can't hear you. Can't hear the discussion.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
We are just discussing about these 7 conditions we already discussed. There's no new discussion. But my question is to you. Could you please come at the podium till your application is not finished?
Oh, sorry.
No problem. You understand there was a change about CVC condition. You understand about that as well, right?
On condition 1 and condition 7.
No, but their staff proposed one other condition as
Oh,
well.
yes, absolutely. I'm
Condition
fine
one,
with 2 being removed, and I'm fine with 4 being removed. Actually, I did have sorry, thank you for reminding me. There was a new condition that the applicant be approved subject to the satisfaction of CVC. This property is not in the CVC watershed. It's in the TRCA watershed. And if there are TRCA comments, I'd like to know what they are, to know what we're committing to. I have not seen any response from any conservation authority as yet on this application, so I assume there are none. Right? We're in TRCA.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, that was a condition that was added by the Region Appeal. I can confirm that it is the TRCA. That's the conservation authority in the area. I know that staff have not received any correspondence from the conservation authority, but this is a condition that the region has indicated that they would like included as part of the approval of this application.
So, in other words, CVC to be read as TRCA. That will satisfy staff?
If there, through Mr. Chair, if there's no comments received to this point, and certainly the TRCA knows when the meeting is.
I understand, and
I don't know what I'm agreeing to when there's nothing before this committee.
I do understand what's your thoughts, but the other option is, in my opinion, is to delay further and have a word with TRCA, right? Which obviously we don't want to go
No.
that way.
And
So at least at this point, if we are proceeding as is, it's not stopping you to go ahead with your roundabout and severance, and those issues or the concerns can be dealt later on with the TRCA.
And through you, Mr. Chair, I'm comfortable that TRCA really will have no comment or involvement on this application. There are valley lands, wetlands at the south end of the
Exactly, that's
abandoned
what I was gonna
property,
say.
and that would be dealt with in terms of setbacks and that sort of thing at the time a plan of subdivision comes forward.
Okay, so all parties.
That's fine.
So again, to just clear one time, we have 7 conditions. Motion has been put forward by Mr. Nurse. There are 1 new condition included, and 2 of them got amended right now as in the motion presented in condition number 1 and condition number 7. Do we have a seconder for this motion? Seconded by Ms. Stoffler. All in favor? This is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify that we are approving this application with a total of 6 conditions, not 7. We have
That's right.
removed condition 2 and 4. We've replaced condition 2 with a condition that approval be from TRCA. So there's a total of 6
Total 6
conditions.
condition. Do I need to amend our motion or?
I just want to clarify
Okay,
for the
no
record
problem.
that there are a total of 6 conditions.
No problem.
Calling application A18140, TriCab Investments Limited. Property is located at Beaumaris Drive West and Queen Street East.
Anyone present from this application? Owner applicant? Nobody? So we would like to put this to the end of the agenda, the bottom of the agenda. So maybe they show up later on. Again, anyone, owner, applicant? 1 second, please. TriCab Investment Limited, Beaumaris Drive West and Queen Street East, in Ward number 8. Nobody? So this application has been moved to the bottom of the agenda. Next
Calling
application.
Through you, Mr. Chair, sorry.
No problem.
Calling application A18141, Gerswap Singh. Property is located at number 31 Sherwood Crescent.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, committee members, Chairman. My name is Gursvik Singh. I'm representing myself. I'm the owner of 31 Sherwood Crescent, and this is regarding the height of our building. That's why we're here for the minor variance. Our current height is at 9.34 meters, and the neighborhood requirement is 8.5 meters. I wanted to request that we're allowed to go ahead with the building, as the height of the roof is the only part that breaches this limit. Otherwise, we have come up with a few recommendations that we could do for ourselves to lower the height. Those recommendations would be either to drop the roof height overall so it meets the 8.5 requirement. Our second option is to cut the concrete walls that are already poured, which would drop down the basement height to about 5 feet. So officially it wouldn't be a basement anymore, it would just be a crawl space, which wouldn't be ideal for us. And then our last suggestion would be just to demolish all the existing walls and then just try to dig deeper. Although that would be more problematic, as all the neighbors have told us, the first question they would ask us was, are you going to finish by December? And at this moment, it looks like if we have to do any more adjustments, we won't be able to finish by December. And working in the winter, it is a requirement to keep the soil underneath warm. So that would require us to put in hay and do all these extra things for the property. And if we can't do any of that, then we would probably have to wait till next April when the frost leaves the soil. So my request is to basically allow us to go ahead, or if we could drop the roof, that would be best.
Okay, sure, we will discuss that. When you mentioned the basement height to be reduced by 5 feet, what is the height in your proposed plan for the basement?
Not drop the basement height by 5 feet, but just to make it
Complete?
overall 5 feet. Like the height of the basement will be 5 feet if we cut the concrete down. The proposed height for our basement should be 8 feet.
And main and second? It's a
Main-
two-story dwelling, right?
Right. The next one will be 10, and then the other one is also 10.
So second is also 10?
Yeah. And it's just, at the moment, the roof's midline is the only thing that reaches this limit of 8.5 meters. So if we drop the roof height, we would be effectively underneath 8.5.
No problem. We'll hear staff's comments, and you can always, if you have any question or concern during the discussion, you can always raise your hand, and you can always interrupt. Anyone in the audience wishes to speak, please come forward with your name and address, please. Sorry, your name again?
Amelia Krakow.
We don't have this out of these letters. Your letter is not here, right? No.
No, you
Okay.
didn't have my letter, but I received, I live next to the, Mr. Singh, so I'm next door neighbor.
Would you be able to get the name and address?
Through Mr. Chair, we just can confirm the municipal address?
29 Sherwood Crescent.
29, thank you.
What I have in front of me is a petition, and I have 26 signatures of the neighbors on Sherwood Crescent, as well as the neighbors backing to Mr. Singh, opposing the proposed 9.34 increase in height. And I would like to read my petition, if possible. I'm writing this letter on behalf of the residents of Sherwood Crescent in Brampton. The parties signed below are opposing proposed Garswick Singh application to increase the building height to a maximum height from 8.5 to 9.34. Residents on nearby streets had also expressed opposition to the proposal. Sherwood Crescent is a special street with residents of all ages and backgrounds. It is the kind of street where you find fresh baking or garden vegetables on your doorstep with a note from your neighbor. We welcome everyone in our neighborhood. The children play on the large front lawns or street hockey under the watch of both their parents and other residents. According to Mr. Singh, they are not here to stay. It is our understanding that the City of Brampton permits existing mature neighborhood development that is intended to be sensitive and gradual, with little visible change, and with the neighborhood density and character remaining intact. Furthermore, the new development should have minimal effect on light, shadowing, and privacy of existing properties, which is not the case of proposed plan. Please advise us if this is not the case in our mature neighborhood, which would mean that we have no right to preserve and enhance the unique identity of the street. The proposed plan to increase the height of the property will not respect and reinforce the character of the streetscapes in the community. The proposal is not keeping with the character of the neighborhood, which is mostly a community of bungalows. The new foundation basement height of 31 Sherwood Crescent is visibly as tall as half of the height of the bungalows on each side of the property. The dwelling would be about 3 times the height of the bungalows surrounding Lot 86, higher than many of the existing trees. The proposed height of the structure will be out of place, not fitting with the existing homes and properties on the street. The mass of the proposed building will destroy a clear view of trees as well as sunshine throughout the day. We are also concerned about the water table, as the new height of the dwelling will or may require changing of the grading, since the new owner made a choice of not digging deeper or lower. At the same time, Mr. Singh intends to build full-height basement, which can result in a basement flooding of the properties on each side of the new dwelling. There will be less garden and grass surrounding the property to absorb water because of the size of the new house. Overall, the proposed severance and plan to build 2-story dwelling with a maximum height of 30.64 feet does not keep with the character of Sherwood Crescent. It will affect our views, our privacy, increase our risk of basement flooding, and reduce our sunlight. As stated previously, we respectfully request that the Committee of Adjustment refuses the application to permit the change of the height and preserve the unique identity of our street. Signed below will wish to receive a Committee of Adjustment notice of this decision. I would like to add, which is not on the petition, but I also would like to add that in addition, Mr. Singh has exhibited this interest in preserving our mature neighborhood by not properly covering the mature trees or protecting the mature trees that are on his property, and the hedges that are on the bordering line between his property and my property, which are there probably for the past 20 years or so. So he has covered the trees with dirt, and which may result in destroying the trees in general. So our recommendation is that the Committee of Adjustment does not allow Mr. Singh to go higher, but rather lower with the basement. And I have all these signatures. I would like to add this to the application.
Sure. Just a comment to you, to the residents of 29 Sherwood. With allowable 8.5 meter, they can still go with the two-story dwelling. You aware about that?
Yes, we are, and we're just to understand, we're not opposing him building the two-story. We're opposing how he's doing it. So instead of going lower, my understanding is that you are able to visit the site. If you stand in front of the house, you will visibly see that his basement is half of my bungalow, half the size of my bungalow. So it will totally be out of place. We do not understand why Mr. Singh didn't go lower. And again, we're not opposing him building two-story. We're opposing how he's doing it, that he didn't go lower with the basement.
Because the house, one house after, when we go south from Mr. Singh's property, the next door is on the south side is bungalow, but the further next is a two-story dwelling.
Across from Mr. Singh, across from Mr. Singh is two-story house, yes, but that house is 8.5 meters. It didn't go above,
Or
and it
whatever
has
the
a
bylaws
regular
say.
basement.
Yeah.
So does the house south of me, which is the two-story as well, south of my house. Again, we're not opposing him building two-story. We're opposing the way he's going with the basement and how high he wants to build and the size of the house.
Sure, no problem. Let's hear the staff, and if you have any other concern, you can always come back.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you for coming forward and bringing this petition on behalf of the residents.
Thank you.
Welcome. On the record, we have another letter, if I'm not wrong, and all of them are in opposition from the address 37 Sherwood Crescent, 20 Sherwood Crescent, and 26 Sherwood, and 39 Sherwood. They are all opposing this proposed application, and these, for the record, these letters are included. Anybody else in the audience wishes to speak on this application? If somebody else is there as well beside this gentleman, please come forward. Please come forward, sir. Anybody else beside these two gentlemen? Sir, your name and address and the reason?
I am the owner of 27 Sherwood, which is a raised bungalow in the neighborhood.
Okay.
And we did this process about 20 years ago. And since this building has started, we do not see a permit on the building or on the fences. They showed up, they started demolishing the house without any safety fences. So the process that's being done is not proper. We are concerned that there's not enough people to come and see if the building is being done proper. Many of us called the city to say what's going on, where's the permits, where's this, and basically being told that they have a permit and you don't need to see it. Should there not be something posted? Because I know when I built the house, I had to have it permit posted all the time. We had inspections all the time. So how did they raise the bungalow that high without anyone saying, no, you can't do that? Now with finally all our complaints, someone has seen it and done it. We don't want another blue building in our neighborhood.
Nobody wants that.
We want a proper, we don't care if they do a two-stage bungalow, but do it properly. The height restrictions are there, so we want it kept the way the neighborhood should be.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I didn't get the name of the speaker. I got the address as 27 Sherwood.
Arthur Texera.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Hi, I'm Rimar Sanchez.
Can you please spell your name?
Rimar, R-I-M-E-R, Sanchez. And my address is 33 Sherwood Crescent,
Please go
which
ahead.
is beside what he's building right now. My primary concern is just basically the height of his basement, which is totally very high comparing to my basement, and I'm just concerned about the grading of that basement that may cause flooding on my house where I'm living right now, and the height of the house, which is totally about 2.75 feet from the normal height, and I'm just concerned during the winter that the snow will be falling on my driveway, which is very near to his house, and I'm concerned about the safety of my family there. So that's the only concern that I have.
Sure, no problem. Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, Melissa Rowley, 43 Sherwood Crescent, Brampton, Ontario, L6X2C9. I'm opposed to the building height. I have no problem with the two-story. It's just the height of the two-story. The foundation is so much higher than everyone else's, and I think it takes away from the mature neighborhood that we're trying to keep.
Okay, sure. Anything else you wishes to add?
No.
Thank you. We'll hear the staff, and I'm sure staff will address the majority of the concerns the neighbors already expressed here. So staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Thank you, through the chair. Staff recommend refusal of this application. It is noted that This site did receive approval of a site plan, SP 17-011, back in 2017. But then during the construction of the dwelling, construction had to be stopped due to a stop work order. The building inspector advised that the contractor stop, and then it was noted that the building was too high, so this is what triggered the minor variance application. Staff have noted that the height of the building is not in keeping with the intent of the official plan or zoning bylaw, and therefore we recommend refusal of the application.
Okay. There was one concern raised by one of the neighbor that there was nothing was posted on the property, or any permit on the fence or any sign. So what is the procedure for that?
I can't speak to that. That's a building matter.
My understanding, through you, Mr. Chair, is that the building permit must be displayed on the site, whether it's displayed at the time that, or made available certainly to the building inspector along with the approved plans.
You're most welcome to come, but is that something different or the stuff we already discussed? Please come forward. No problem. If you wishes to come, you can come as well. The other lady, yes, please.
I just wanted to add on behalf of all the neighbors that actually called about the building permit, is that the person who advised us that there's no need to display the building permits. All we need to know, and exactly that's what we've been told, all we need to know is that they do have a building permit. So we want to understand.
Advised by the city employee?
That's right.
Well, it's clear now, so at least for the future.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't speak on behalf of the building division. If they've been speaking to building division staff who are obviously enforcing the building code, that is the response they would be required to get. I can only speak to the zoning bylaw. I can confirm that a building permit was issued and that an order to stop work was issued as construction was proceeding. That was not in accordance with the approved plans.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Any question by committee members?
No, I'm ready to put a motion on the floor to support staff recommendations, however.
Mr. Sain, you wish to add something else? Any of the concerns of the neighbors?
So I recognize the concerns of the neighbors, and in their best interest, with all this opposition, I will drop the height. It feels like the best approach. I don't want to make enemies for no reason. It was my understanding that I didn't need to post the building permit as well, because I asked at building department, so that was my mistake. Maybe I should have instead. So I recognize that as well, and hopefully we can just get this done.
Well, one way, my understanding is it's good that we are here discussing this matter today, rather than you start building even further and then bringing it down.
That would just be more costly.
Exactly. So it's always in the best. We live in a beautiful city, and it's always in the best interest for everyone to work with each other. And that's why that's why we are here, and that's why all these neighbors are here, taking their time off from their busy schedule, from work or their family life. But I applaud that you understand, at least now, that if we go ahead and you're willing to make some changes, and there will be proper procedure to follow, and hopefully you will put together a beautiful property there.
I hope so.
Okay?
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. There's a motion put forward, I believe, by Mr. Nurse, recommending staff's recommendations. Motion put forward by Mr. Nurse, seconded by Ms. Toffler. All in favor? This application is refused. Thank you. Thanks to all the neighbors. Come forward.
Calling application A18-142, Gerard and Anna Cormier. The property is located at 16 Peggy Ann Cove.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Anna and Jerry Cormier. We've resided on 16 Peggy Ann Cove for 20 years. We built a deck maybe about 2016. We're here basically to permit a deck encroachment that basically encroaches into the exterior and rear yard setbacks. Now, with our application, we did submit pictures. I'm not sure whether or not you've had the opportunity to review them, because it kind of makes our case a little bit more clear. When you just look at the property survey and you see the dimensions, it's a little deceiving as far as what we've built, but the pictures kind of speak for themselves. Basically, we moved into that house in 1998. We have basically the retaining wall has a land which slopes, so it's kind of very dysfunctional. When we did move into the property, we were very challenged with the maintenance of that property, the weeds. At the time, it was growing onions, so we spent a lot of time just trying to pull weeds and make it cosmetically appealing. It was a piece of land that we couldn't use. Now, because we both have a large family and friend network, we do a lot of entertaining outside. It's summertime, and that's part of our lifestyle is get-togethers and family time. So we decided to build a deck so that we can utilize the space. Plus, we do live near Professor's Lake, so the view is gorgeous. People really enjoy coming out and just sort of breathing in that nature, looking at the lake, having barbecues, family time. So it is very appealing for both ourselves and for our family and our friends. So we built the deck. We are here to allow a permit. We want to get a permit, but right now we need basically permission to have the deck encroach into the rear and exterior side. Now, Jeannie, do you have the pictures with the application right now? So if you look at the pictures, it kind of speaks. It's very nice. And also in reference to the report that I'm sure you received from Stephen, dated October 2nd, 2018. So basically, based on the report, it does conform to the intent of the official plan, and basically our proposal variances are minor in nature. Again, we're just trying to utilize the existing grade and basically extend our living space. And it also allows us access to the pool, so that when our guests are over, they don't have to go in. It's a walkout basement, so they don't have to go into the house and across my living space inside to the pool and then up to use the bathroom. Because unfortunately, we don't have a bathroom in the basement. So that's why we're here today.
Maybe you were not aware when your husband took your picture.
No. Yeah, that was my downtime.
No problem.
So it is space that we really value, yes.
Okay, any question to the applicant by committee members so far? Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? And staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Staff are in support of this application, subject to the following conditions. Number one, that the extent of the variances be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. Number two, that the owner shall obtain a building permit within the 60 days of the decision of approval. Number three, that a privacy fence along the rear property line be at a continuous height of 2 meters from the grade. Number four, that the deck, as identified on the public notice as deck number 1, shall be no more than 4.01 meters in width. Number five, that deck number 1 shall be no more than 0.22 meters in height along the exterior side yard lot line. In addition, deck 1 shall at no point be higher than 0.22 meters in height as established along the exterior side yard lot line within the exterior side yard. And finally, number 6, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of this committee shall render the approval null and void.
And we are definitely willing to meet all those conditions, yes.
And timelines and everything is
Yes.
acceptable?
Mhm.
Okay. No further discussion. Looking for a motion? Motion to approve with conditions by Mr. Nurse, seconded by Ms. Doffler. All in favor? This is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Calling application A18144, Cylinder and Darminder Guman. The property is located at 13 Ecclestone Drive.
Hi, my name is Cylinder Guman, owner of property 13 Ecclestone Drive. So here I'm presenting, I applied for the minor variance for the side entrance to permit an interior side yard setbacks of 1.14 meter to an above grade side door, whereas the requirement is 1.2 meter. And also applied for the shed where the existing structure setback is 0.457 meter and the requirement is a 600 meter. So if I get that, so okay.
Okay. Committee members, any question to the applicant so far? None? Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? None? We have 2 letters. Both of them are in opposition for this property. One is residence number 11 Ecclestone Drive in disagree and don't approve. That's what they are suggesting. And another one is in opposition for house number 20 by Mr. Terry Ernst. So for the record, these 2 letters have been included. Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Staff are in support of this application, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, that the extent of the variances be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. Number 2, that drainage from the accessory structure's roof shall flow onto the applicant's property. 3, that the owner shall obtain a building permit within 60 days of the decision of approval. 4, that the above grade side entrance shall not be used to access an unregistered second dwelling unit. And number 6, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void.
Okay. Any question by committee members to the staff? Concern? None? Ma'am, you're in agreement with these conditions? Acceptable to you?
Yeah, I will fulfill all the conditions.
Okay. So if not, then looking to proceed further for motion. Motion by, with conditions by Ms. Stoffler, seconded by Mr. Nurse. All in favor? This is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, all the member of committees.
No
Thank
problem.
You.
Thank you. Ms. Max? So there's a request of recess break, and we can come back probably at 10:45. Ms. Myers? We'll be back at 10:45 after the break. On this meeting in order again. Sorry for the little delay because the door was locked. Ms. Myers, please go ahead.
Calling application A18145, Forest Estates Inc. Property is located at 4320 Queen Street East.
Good morning. My name is Tony Simonelli, and I'm representing Forestside Estates. And we're here to request the continuing use of an existing sales office. I've read the staff report. I've read the conditions. I have no objections or nothing to add to it.
Thank you. Simple and sweet. Committee members, any questions so far? None? Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? None? Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff reviewed the application against the floor test as outlined in the Planning Act and recommending approval subject to 4 conditions. Condition number 1, that the sales pavilion shall be removed from the site after 3 years from the date of approval or when all lots are sold, whichever comes first. A demolition permit shall be obtained prior to the removal of the structure from the site. Condition 2, that sales shall only pertain to units on draft plan of subdivision 21T 16009B. 3, the owner and builder for the existing sales pavilion shall enter into an amending temporary sales office agreement extending the date by which the temporary sales pavilion must be removed to 3 years from the final date of approval or when all lots for draft plan subdivision 21T 1609B are sold, whichever comes first. And lastly, condition number 4, failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee will render the approval null and void.
Thank you. As the gentleman already indicated that he's in agreement and accept these recommendations.
Yes.
No other further discussion. Looking for a motion to proceed. Motion by Mr. Nurse to support these recommendations and seconded by Ms. Doffler. All in favor? This is approved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Calling application A18146, Daniels LR Corporation. Property is located at 1 Beckenrose Court.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, staff, and members of the audience. My name is Mark Bradley. I'm with Glenn Schnarr & Associates, and we are the planning consultants for Daniels Corporation, owner of 1 Beckenrose Court. I've reviewed the planning department comments and conditions with the owner, and we have no concerns or objections. Given that, in the interest of the committee's time, does committee want a presentation? If not, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Which application?
146, 147.
Are we dealing both applications at the same time? Separate, right? Okay. No question. Then anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? None? Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff have reviewed the application against the floor test as outlined in the Planning Act and are recommending approval subject to 5 conditions. Condition 1, that sales should only pertain to units within blocks 298 and 308 on Register Plan 43M1979. That the sale of units for 50 Edinburgh Drive be permitted on the subject lands until January 1st, 2020 or until the 36 units are sold, whichever comes first. 3, that the sale of units for Block 308 on Plan 43M 1979 be permitted until December 31st, 2020, as per the previous Committee of Adjustment approval granted under City File A18-066. 4, that all visitor parking areas on the property remain accessible to visitors and free and clear of construction materials. And lastly, 5, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void.
Sir, as you already indicated, you are in agreement and you accept these recommendations?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so looking for a motion. Motion by Ms. Stoffler, seconded by Mr. Nurse. All in favor? Application number A18-146 is approved.
Thank you very much.
Calling application A18-147, Daniels LR Corporation. This property is located at 50 Edinburgh Drive.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Arlie, planner at Glenshar and Associates. We are the planning consultants for Daniels LR Corporation. Similar to my colleague Mark Bradley, we have reviewed the comments from the staff report and we have no objections. If you'd like, I can still provide a presentation or answer any other questions.
No, that's fine. I guess we have pretty much everything in front of us. If you wishes to add something beside your application, you are more than welcome.
No.
Okay, committee members, any question? None? Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? None? Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff reviewed the application against the 4 tests outlined in the Planning Act and are recommending approval subject to 3 conditions. 1, that sales shall only be permitted for units within Block 298 and Register Plan 43M 1979. 2, that the sale of units for Block 298 on Plan 43M 1979 be permitted on the subject lands until December 31st, 2021, or until all units have been sold, whichever comes first. And lastly, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void.
As you already indicated that you are in agreement, right?
Yep.
Okay, so looking for a motion to proceed. Motion by Ms. Stoffler, seconded by Mr. Nurse. All in favor? This is approved. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Calling application A18-148, Christine Hay Callahan. Property is located at 70 Commodore Drive.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tashina Ashmead. To my right is my mother. State your name.
Christine Callahan.
Residents of 70 Commodore Drive, Brampton. And we are here today to request a variance to permit an interior side yard setback of 0.21 meters to the exterior sideway leading to a below-grade entrance, whereas the bylaw permits or requires a minimum of 1.2 meters. So in the interest of time and to avoid repeating information contained in the application, I propose to simply kind of dive into the points of contention after reading the report. That's okay?
Yes, please go ahead.
So to confirm for the committee, the minor variance we are seeking will not be utilized for the establishment of a secondary unit. The side door is strictly for personal use, namely so that my aunt, who has physical challenges and limitations, may be able to access the unit with more ease. At present, she needs to access the unit from the front of the home, which involves a set of stairs, and then she has an additional 2 sets of stairs for her to access her space in the basement. So the installation of a side door means that she'll only have 1 set of stairs to manage in order to get down to the space where she spends most of her time. So I do agree, while there is not another means to access the rear yard, the below-grade landing is not significant in size or depth. One could access the yard through the landing, and I would argue that access through the landing is no more onerous than emergency response personnel, for example, having to advance a set of stairs in somebody's home to access or to provide care to a patient. It's been noted in the report that the landing poses safety concerns, but what's interesting about that note is the landing is the best alternative resolution for my aunt in light of her illness. It's a safe and desirable alternative for her, and therefore under that context or under that lens, it seems a bit of an exaggeration to label the landing as a major safety concern, as it's ideal for her in her condition. So again, while access to the rear yard from the adjacent property may not be desirable, it's simply an additional alternative to going through the landing if necessary. The report raises the potential for a hypothetical fence that could be erected between the abutting properties. However, as the yard currently stands, a fence is not a realistic or practical option. The neighbor's property, as it currently stands, they have concrete at the side of their yard. I've got a picture too that I can put up. And so if there were any fence to be erected, it would be on our property, and that's something that we would be willing to put on title as a restriction or a limitation that we would never do that. So if any fence, as you can see in the picture, any fence would be on our property line. In the report, there was also a note on property drainage. That was taken into consideration, and the landing includes a drainage system, which is visible as well.
Yeah.
Again, not to reiterate, but I understand that it may not be a desirable practice to use the adjacent lands to access the rear yard, as previously mentioned. It's just an alternative to using our own land. I think our situation is a unique set of facts that warrants the approval by the committee. And reading the planner's notes, this might be a moot point, but I thought I'd just put it up there. In the event that the planner was suggesting a potential floodgate situation, meaning if the committee were to approve our particular application, what that would mean for applications going forward. But I'm confident, and I feel as though that this is a very unique set of facts that will allow the committee to reject future applications. Unique factors such as the type of dwelling that we're dealing with, residents within the home that would greatly benefit from the side door entrance, a number of other factors as well. So we all know that the Planning Act doesn't define a minor variance, therefore we need to look to the case law to fill in the gaps. And the courts have observed that minor involves consideration of both size and impact. On this point, from my point of view, I think the staff report focuses heavily on size when a more liberal approach should be taken. So we maintain the position that the variance is minor because accessing the rear yard can be done so either through the landing or the yard space slightly to the left of the property. Ultimately, if required, the rear yard it's not impossible to access the rear yard. And I think that the report touches on this point. It's very narrowly construed, in our opinion. The actual size of the landing, including its depth, is small. And as I mentioned, advancing a set of stairs is more onerous and presents a greater risk than simply walking through the land or slightly to the left of it. And that's why we believe that the variance is minor when we consider the size of the landing, its overall impact, and the ultimate ability to still access the rear yard in the circumstances. So in closing, we'd like to leave the committee with the following thoughts. What is the message the City of Brampton would like to send its residents? The message that our city bylaws will be interpreted and applied so rigidly to the detriment of its residents that have limitations that the bylaws simply cannot account for, residents that are willing and would benefit from compromising with the city in order to meet their needs. For example, approving a minor variance with conditions is not an uncommon practice across municipalities. So all we are asking for the committee today is to balance the interests of those who use this space day in and day out and are in need of this variance from a hardship perspective as well, against the interests aimed in the bylaws and the infrequent or odd occurrence that a third party will actually need to access the rear yard, knowing that if somebody actually did need to access the yard, they can do so. It's not impossible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. I would like to hear staff's point of view before I comment. Just one question to you. Is your family, I mean your mom lives there? Because my understanding there's a tenant living, not in the basement, up on the main level.
Family member.
Okay, because during my site visit, that was my, but anyway, I could be wrong. Any questions so far to the committee member? Sure. Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? None?
And we've also just kind of brought some support too about the relative.
Well, you can provide that to the staff, and we'll have it.
Okay.
Staff, could you please win your comments?
Staff are not in support of this application. Staff are of the opinion that the the side yard is to be used and is to be unencumbered by stairs or landings. It should be noted that this is a semi-detached dwelling, so there's no other side yard to be used. This is the sole entry into the rear yard. The landing as is now, I'm not sure, hasn't received a building permit yet, so there may be additional stair required. In addition to that, it was noted by our engineering that a revised grading plan would have to be approved in order to approve this, as it's noted that there is a drain for the landing, but that's only for the landing. It does not accommodate all the drainage from the rear of the property to flow through the side yard into the city swale or city drainage at the front of the building. So staff is of the opinion that there's not enough space to maneuver equipment through the side yard, and have concerns that in the future there may not be enough space to to maneuver around this area in order to access the rear yard.
Okay. Question to the staff. 0.21 meter is from the property line to where the landing starts?
It would
Through
be-
the zoning.
Yes, it's measured to the exterior wall of the support post. So yes, the outer wall of the stair support closest to the property line.
From here to?
That is, no, not, that would be the inner. Sorry, let me. It's measured from this,
Oh, okay.
yeah, not from the interior, so from this. Although it's in, right there.
But that is in the same level of.
That's correct. That's correct. It's the building foundation wall that's required to support that stairwell, and setbacks are measured from the outside of that. The bylaw limitation on below grade entrances is simply that they're not permitted in a required side yard. So that's what the variance would be, whether that was flush to the ground. The permit that was issued was for an at-grade door, and as you can see, it's just a very small step that the door, I guess, as a result of probably an interior landing, had to be placed below grade.
That's what I was coming. It's a semi-detached. If it's a detached property, then you have other side of your house for the access to your backyard. And we do deal many applications on every hearing similar to yours. I noticed during my visit, and it's clearly from the picture, it's not really that deep. Is there was any way the interior side, as Ms. Corzola indicated, that you could lower down the landing inside the house, so the door, like there was no need to install this door below grade. It could go on the grade level or the above grade. As I can see, it's not more than 6 to 7 inches, or maybe less.
Even my mother might be able to speak to it more confidently than I can. I'm not a tradesman, but from my understanding, in order to meet the height requirements of the door, it was a challenge for them to make it or to construct it so that it was above grade.
Okay. Back to staff. In the previous applications, we have seen even some applications going down a step or two below. For the safety concerns, this is even less than a step. I do share the concern for the drainage, not just the landing from the back as well. But at the same time, if this is just a comment, if we would have to defer this application and the applicant can come back with engineered the drainage plan properly, is there something we can look into it that might satisfy staff's concerns?
Through the chair, each minor variance application is unique, as we know. The other ones, I did refer back to sort of our historical support or not support of these applications. Typically in the past, it's been for engineering or access, as you've noted. The other ones that have suggested approval, those ones have had mostly been detached.
Yep.
So they've had alternate access to the rear yard for drainage and for access. I think it should be noted as for this one as well too. I don't know what the ultimate height of that landing has to be, if there's requirement for an additional step above that, due to, if there was additional step required for grading or for building. I don't know what the ultimate height of that landing needs to be, or if there needs to be an additional step down. So currently it's identifying one step. It could be that 2 are required. Regardless if it's 1 or 2 or 3. In this particular case, due to the fact that there is only the one side yard, it is my opinion for this particular application that staff, or in myself, I'm not in support of this particular case.
I understand. Even when we look at this picture here, from this door, we can see there's some gap here. There was no need for them to go even this deep to make it level to this entrance, because this landing is even a little bit deeper than the door entry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just one comment on that. I don't know what the building code requires for a threshold entrance. The building code might not allow an entrance that's flush to grade on the off chance that when it does accumulate water, it would flow right into the house. So I really can't speak to whether a step would be required any deeper than that.
If we are, for example, going to refuse this application as staff is not supporting, what could be their options? To simply close down the entrance?
The option would be to either, yes, remove the below grade, obviously, and elevate the door such that it remains at grade. So I don't know if that means then an adjustment to the landing inside or a step down once you get inside. I don't know what the interior condition is of the house, but approval was given for a door at grade in this instance. This is only slightly below grade. They may also choose to attempt to alter grade, but that would mean regrading the entire side yard to bring that door in an at-grade situation.
I assure the committee we've exhausted all options. We've sat with our team of professionals to discuss this, and they've assured us that this was the best alternative in the circumstances. And I can acknowledge, yes, and I agree, that this is the only access to the rear yard as it is a semi-detached dwelling. You know, as I mentioned previously, we'll be willing to put something on title that says we would never erect a fence in that space. But also, just if the committee could be cognizant of the fact that if we could live in a semi-detached house and we could afford to, we absolutely would. And so hopefully that won't be like that standard of the fact that we're dealing with a semi-detached home versus a detached home. Not to let that work against us completely. Like, we're doing the best that we can here.
Chair, if the entrance was in the rear yard, it wouldn't be an issue, would it?
Yeah.
Would their staff be an issue if the entrance were in the rear yard?
No, an entrance in the rear yard would be permitted for below grade. Obviously, the construction to work below grade would be significantly more extensive than this.
And result in more steps, which we're trying to avoid for my aunt.
Now, sorry, Chair, with entrance to the rear yard, just for the benefit of the applicant, I mean, certainly someone of my stature can make it down there pretty quickly, but if you've got emergency folks with their equipment and, you know, firemen with their bulky clothes, it could be a challenge. So it's that kind of entry or to the backyard.
Even committing to not put up a fence, we will not put up a fence in that space.
True. However, when the committee makes decisions, it's
not
for,
just the fence.
I guess, in perpetuity. Yeah. So when your family sells this property and another family moves in, they may have different plans.
Right. Have you consulted with a professional? What are your options? If you wishes to request that, this is you can certainly. If there is some scope of bringing the door a little bit high to avoid this minor below grade portion.
That little piece before the door?
Yeah, not just before the door, like the entire step. So. Because as long my understanding is you have 1.2 meter clear setback, the entrance is fine for a grade level or above grade. So then basically you don't need to come here. If you wishes to defer this application, you can certainly request and consult with somebody proper who can design a properly engineering grading plan or could satisfy further the staff regarding the drainage issues.
Okay, so just to repeat, you would like us to consult with somebody regarding a suitable drainage.
It's up to you, because whatever is presented in front of us, we have to make the decision accordingly. And right now, I am sympathetic towards you and your family, because if it's just very minor below grade, if it's 1, 2, or 3 more steps, then I would be clear my indication right now that I'm inclined to support staff recommendation. I just want to see if you are willing to do some. Otherwise, we have to make our decision accordingly right now. And the only sad part is just very minor, and it's not that deep. So that's my only concern at this point, and that's what holding me into, and I'm discussing further.
So to bring up the door to grade, is that, that's what you're saying?
Then you don't need us. You don't need to be here. If somehow that is possible to bring at the grade level.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I don't think we can. The inspector that came here the first time said that he understand why they had to do what they do there. There was no room for them to go up.
Okay.
With the door.
And if you can't go up, then if you have somebody who can satisfy the other drainage concerns, you have some proper drawings can come and submit it to the city, and they can your agent can come and discuss with staff if something they can come up with. So there is some something proposed by a professional, so we can work with them. It's entirely your call. Otherwise, as is presented, we'll be making the decision.
So the drainage that's there right now, that's not sufficient? So
That's just for the landing. How about the water coming from your backyard to the front?
Okay. Okay, so you'd like us to get a professional in that can speak to, I guess, the integrity of the drainage system or implementing a drainage system for water coming in from the back of the yard? I mean, sure, if that's something that we need to do, we'd be happy to do so. I mean, we're just here to try to work together as well.
Sure, and they're gonna consult with staff, so then go to professional.
Yeah, staff, what's your opinion on that? Is this simply worth, because it's, I do understand it's a semi-detached, only one side, you can go into the backyard, but at the same time, since it's not that deep, if you think if something can come out of this discussion, bringing a professional in it, we can work around?
Through the chair, engineering would require a revised grading plan. Now that could be done before hearing this again, or alternatively it could come through as a condition. So, but as part of this, for it to be approved either at any time, it would require, or our engineering group is highly recommending that a revised grading plan be submitted and approved as part of this application.
So Chair, I don't think we'll approve this today. I don't think, no, we're not. But, you know, if the applicant can get some face time from staff, there's some things you can do, then go to a pro and come back.
I do agree with Mr. Nurse. If you seek a deferral, I mean into the future date, and you can work with the staff and bring a professional into it, then we can look your application again in the future date. That's what she wishes to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that involve appearing before the committee again at some point, or strictly working with?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Obviously committee again.
So does that involve another application?
Nope. Within the same application.
Okay.
Okay. So what we are looking in terms of timeline, I'm sure one meeting would not be enough, obviously. Maybe 2 or 3 meetings at least from now.
Through the chair, I would recommend indefinite, just because if we find a if there's additional information that may provide security from the city's perspective, or also allowing them additional time during, we're going to be coming up to the winter season soon, so not sure about when they're able to. So I would highly recommend an indefinite deferral.
Okay. So indefinite deferral is recommended suggested by staff, even though it's requested by you. And I feel that's in your best option given the circumstances. But you need to be in discussions with staff as soon as you can, and bring a professional who can further assist you moving forward, and come back to the committee as soon as possible.
And what do we mean when we say indefinite referral?
Indefinite means sometime what we do, we put the timeline. Today is the meeting, and the next meeting I believe is October 23rd, and then there will be following meeting in November. So sometime we put the timeline on it, that this matter to be heard in, for example, October 23rd hearing, but now it's indefinite. That means whenever it's ready, because you need some time with professional. So that means there's no time limit, but whenever you're ready, you can always come back with the discussions of staff.
Okay.
But obviously there has to be proper procedure of the circulations and others, and Secretary Treasurer can advise you on that.
Okay. Is there, so indefinite, yes, but indefinite to a certain date? I guess we're just trying to balance both interests here.
Indefinite, if there is a work order or if there is a violation notice or in the prosecution, then we don't really, or the staff never recommends indefinite, and the committee mainly they don't really go that way. But in this case, it's not bad for you to go in indefinite.
So I'm sure it was just work in a manner so that an order to comply isn't issued.
So order to comply is not issued.
I can confirm at this point, no, there hasn't been an order
Well,
to
I'm saying,
comply.
judge the time to come back, such that
Exactly.
you don't get an order to comply.
Yeah, so it's better to come back when you're ready instead of just waiting for order to comply, then you're bound to come back to the city. So are we on the same page on that with this discussion?
We have to, right? There's nothing else that we can do.
Sorry?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So applicant is seeking indefinite deferral, and how we are dealing with committee members, looking for a motion. Support in favor of indefinite deferral by Mr. Nurse, seconded by Ms. Doppler. All in favor? This application has been deferred indefinitely. Please work with the staff as soon as possible, and you need a professional into it so we can proceed further and you can come back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Calling application A18149, Slavika Petrowski. The property is located at 7573 Creditview Road.
Sir, good to see you back here again.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's always a pleasure to be back. Just for the record, my name is Bill Outred. I'm representing the owner of 7573 Creditview Road. Mr. Chair, I'm aware of planning comments. Maybe I'll just give a very brief history of what has gone on with this particular property over the last 8 months or so.
Sure.
So that the committee understands why we are here. My client had purchased the property back in about 2012. It was a heritage home in very poor shape. When he first purchased it, he did some interior demolition, some walls and so forth. I originally had a stop work order, understood that he had to go through the full process with Heritage, and began to get all the plans and get everything in order to proceed through with getting a Heritage permit. The original Heritage permit was obtained in 2015. He also required other permits with respect to the garage, CVC clearance, also required committee of adjustment approval, which I believe I was at the committee in early 2017 to obtain the approvals for a number of setbacks and such to permit the addition to the existing Heritage House. We obtained building permits late, I believe it was in December of 2017, and he began construction of the addition at the back of the house. And when he was underway with the addition, I believe he spoke to his designer about making it slightly larger. There's also a couple of meetings on site with the inspectors. Ultimately, I'm not advocating this, but ultimately he went ahead and put the foundation in another 200 square foot addition to the addition that had been approved by building permit. Of course, I'm looking for the copy of the plan right now that I can put on the overhead if someone could just slip that on for me. Thank you. So on the overhead, I've indicated basically in yellow what the additional area is over and above what was approved by the building permit in 2017. It's approximately 11 feet from the side of the house. It's the actual foundation area is about 220 square feet. The total area is 440 square feet. So it's just, I believe it's 41 square meters. So this is on a property that is 2.8 acres in size. I'm not, obviously with the heritage limitations, there was no regard paid to what the addition was and the fact that it was over. I believe my client didn't understand that he was over until the actual foundation was put in place. But at that stage, we were dealing with getting the plans and proceeding through with getting everything set for a building permit resubmission. When we obviously had the plans, we also submitted to Heritage. We had one meeting in particular with Heritage. I believe they were on site as well and spoke to the owner. Ultimately, Heritage indicated to us in July that they could not support the addition because per our variance, it is over the limitation of 255 square meters by approximately 41 meters squared. What's being built is 296 square meters, whereas 255 square meters is required. So Heritage indicated due to their 2007 regulations change and putting that cap and floor area that they could not support the addition. This went to Heritage Committee in August with a recommendation for refusal. Furthermore, I came forward and did a deputation at Planning Committee in early September to advise that we would like to work with Heritage to try and see what can be done. There was other factors as well, such as the fence that Heritage did not like at the front of the property that was built. There was an old cedar rail fence that had been taken down. As well, there's a few other issues with actually the house itself. So we were willing to work with Heritage, but ultimately planning turned down our request, and then 2 days after, council turned down our request to defer the decision to not allow us to work any further with Heritage. So at this point, and prior to that September meeting with Planning Committee and council, we did submit the committee of adjustment. So at this point, we are wanting to just proceed with the application today. I don't think we really have a choice. Simply put, in retrospect to the size of the property, it is a very minor addition. Yet, as I said, they are very restrictive in their cap of the 255 meters squared. So there seemed to be no negotiation whatsoever as far as anything over that 255 meters squared. Prior to 2007, I believe the only cap for the floor area was actually the FSI of 0.17 times the lot area. And I believe, just so the committee is aware of what could be built there, I believe, I'll just give you an accurate figure. Based on that, you could actually build a 20,735 square foot addition or a house on this actual property just due to the size. So you can see the difference between what was there in 2007 and what the requirements are now, 255 meters squared. There are a lot of variations of different homes all throughout the Churchville area. There's homes that are much larger. There's lots that are extremely small that still have the same cap, 255 meters squared. So as I said, I know first of all our client went ahead with the foundation and so forth with the addition without the benefit of speaking to the city and obtaining the permit. Yet, in my view, it is essentially a minor variation to the actual size of the home. If the committee's had a chance to go out and see the home, I can just put the elevation on that shows the extension along the one side. It is visible from the street, which is also an issue pertaining to Heritage. And one moment, I apologize, but it's really the floor area, the additional floor area, that's the problem. Of course, I'm looking for the particular picture and I can't find it, but I'll put an overhead of the actual plan. You could just slip that on, please. You can see the front elevation. You can see the porch that was all approved through the permit, and you can see the variable addition at the back behind the house. So that is essentially what the Heritage is opposing. I'm not going to go on into great detail about this. I think the committee knows of the property, knows of the difficulties. Planning's comments are very descriptive in their opposition to it. Maybe I could have planning read their comments, and that can maybe do a summation to proceed further. Thank you.
Okay. Any question by the committee members to the applicant so far?
Not sure.
None. Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? None. We have two letters. One by Remington Brook, no objection, and second by there's an objection for this variance by property owner 7640 Credit View Road, Catherine Falston. So two of these letters, and we have correspondence from CVC with no objection. Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Thank you, through the chair. Staff are not in support of this application. I think the applicant has already provided a fairly good representation of the chronology of events, which I've also outlined in the report. I do want to also highlight, furthermore, though, that there was the previous minor variance application, which was approved for the garage, was an increase of a maximum permitted of 48 meters squared, which is approximately 500 square meters, to 225 square meters, which is approximately 2,500 square feet. So the garage was able to increase in size by approximately 2,000 square feet. Highlighting some of the objectives of the official plan and the Bramwest plan, and then furthermore, specifically the Churchville Heritage Conservation District Plan. New construction should respect the prevailing character of adjacent buildings, streetscape, height, orientation, roof line, fenestration, scale. Section 5.2 more specifically, that locate new additions in a way that will not result in the widening of the appearance of the front facade. So the addition, it's not only an addition, but it's an addition to the side of the building, which does further widen the appearance of the front facade. So that's just to highlight another aspect of the official plan, specifically the Heritage Conservation District Plan. The zoning bylaw for this area was created due to the policies through the Heritage Conservation District Plan. And as such, they should be upheld, the zoning bylaw criteria. It's desirable, so the desirable aspect of the development of the land, it's noted that the Heritage Board, the Planning and Development Committee, as well as Council have all supported the refusal of this of the heritage permit application. And this demonstrates that the heritage staff, as well as the Heritage Board and Council, do not find that the application is appropriate for the development of the land. And that's, I just wanted to highlight a couple of the elements that were taken into consideration by planning in reviewing of this application to increase the GFA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you like to?
Oh, sure. No, thank you, Mr. Chair. As I said, this is a bit of a difficult situation, without a doubt. Due to the Heritage refusing the application and that being upheld by Planning Committee and Council, of course, we are intending to proceed with an appeal of the Heritage decision. So I understand the circumstances of where we are at, Mr. Chair. You've seen me here many times, and I don't like necessarily proceeding through with an application to LPAT. I know where my position stands here, so I'm not going to waste the committee's time by giving a long duration speech about the attributes of this application. I'm pretty confident of the outcome, so I will leave it at that unless you have any questions.
Okay. So I guess it's obvious as Heritage Board, you don't have approval from them.
Sorry?
By the Heritage Board, they refuse the application as well.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So we will be appealing that to LPAT. And if refused, we'll likely be doing the same with this application.
Mm-hmm. So in case, as you said, you're going to appeal, and staff's recommendation is not in your favor here as well. So would you, if outcome is not the way you would like to see, would you be interested in appealing that as well? If that's what.
Yes. Yes. As I said, I know we're not going to get any further today, as I said, with this application, and I'm not going to pretend that we're not going to take this to LPAT, but I'm just putting it right out there with the committee. If you're wondering why I'm not going through a 15-minute synopsis of this application,
no, that is why. How much time you think you'll have by the time you will be dealing with the appeal, or you will be done with the appeal with the Heritage Board?
Well, we'll deal with it together. It'll be about 5 months to get to a LPAT meeting, 5 to 6 months max.
So for that, you did not consider indefinite deferral here, or that's what something never really you thought the proper channel?
Unless I'm wrong, I just assume that the committee probably wouldn't be considering the application based on Plan's comments. I think it's probably prudent for the committee to go forward with refusal of this application so that we can deal with them together, basically appeal it together and deal with them LPAT, as one.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just, as I said, I'm being brutally honest with the committee as opposed to pretending that the outcome is going to be something different. Thank you. Very odd, but
No problem. We have dealt this kind of situation as well in the past. So no problem. If no further discussion, looking for a motion.
Motion to support staff recommendations.
Motion to support staff's recommendation by Mr. Nurse, seconded by Ms. Doppler. All in favor? This application has been refused.
thank you.
Calling application A18150, GFL Environmental Inc. Property is located at 40 Advance Boulevard.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon.
I'm here representing the owners of 40 Advance Boulevard. This particular application, I would appreciate if the committee went forward with an approval, but let me describe the application first.
Sure.
This is an application for an existing tent type structure at the back of the existing building. It was put up, just put an overhead up, nice. Once again, put up without a benefit of a permit, but I don't believe there should be any difficulty with this particular application. The purpose of the tent type structure, and I don't really see it too well on the overhead, but this is a company called Sure Horizon Environmental, and what they do is they do recycling of basically solid wastes and such, and what they're using this tent structure for is to basically be able to back in a truck and actually dump the waste. It is then pulled into the building and it's processed. So the purpose of the tent is basically to provide some containment to the agents that are being dumped into the building. That involves sludge, sawdust, other particulars and such. It's also important to keep the area dry at the backs to keep the rain out, protect any runoff from the back of the building where it is being dumped by the trucks. So it is a structure that, as I said, has been built to facilitate, basically keeping the weather out of that ramp area. I have seen the planning comments. All I would just want to comment on is planning is suggesting a minor site plan in a 30-day period to be able to facilitate that, as well as a building permit within 90 days. I have no problems with doing either. It should be a relatively straightforward process, but I'm not sure if 30 days and 90 days is going to be adequate. I might suggest maybe doubling that to 60 days and 120 days, condition number 2, 120 days if the committee sees fit.
Okay. Well, committee members, any question to the applicant so far?
No, but the 30, the 60 and 120 days for condition 1, and I think it was 120 for condition 2. I have no objections to that.
Yeah, we'll hear the staff and maybe then we can have some clarity. Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? And staff, could you please begin your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff reviewed the application and supports as outlined in the Planning Act and are recommending approval subject to 3 conditions. Condition 1, that a limited site plan application be submitted within 30 days of the committee's decision, and that the site plan shall be approved and implemented within 90 days of the committee's final decision, or within an extended period of time as approved by the Director of Development Services. 2, that the owner obtain a building permit for the accessory structure waste enclosure within 90 days from the date of the decision of the committee. And lastly, 3, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee will render the approval null and void. Just to provide some more context with respect to a limited site plan application review, we typically process these applications within 5 to 10 business days. It's not an onerous process. There's no fee associated with that submission. The drawings that the applicant have included as part of their submission for their variance application would be considered adequate for us to review. It's just an opportunity for staff to determine whether any additional screening measures would be considered to be appropriate in this instance. Very, very minor. Nothing that would warrant a lengthy review or or delay this application proceeding further.
Okay. Sir, back to you. The number of days, are you satisfied with staff's response, or you still feel that you need more time?
The staff feels that they can get it approved in 30 days if we were to submit the existing plans, and they are willing to extend if necessary. I guess that's enough for me. I should be satisfactory then. The only reason I'm asking for more is we've, of course, been in a situation where we've asked, for a 60-day turnaround, and of course, in one particular situation, we are, I think, 10 months through the process, and we still don't have site plan approval, so you can understand my trepidation.
Because in that condition number 1, it also says within an extended period of the time as approved by the Director of Development Services. So if in the case it's going over, which doesn't seem like, but still the parties can work together.
Yes.
On that, right?
That should be fine, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
So you're in agreement with the staff's recommendation, and no further business. Looking for a motion to proceed. Motion to approve staff's recommendation by Mr. Moore, seconded by Mr. Stockler. All in favor? This is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Application A18151, Sharhat Anjana and Meena Sharma, properties located at that application has been deferred, my apologies. Calling application A18152, David and Wendy Goodrich, properties located at 123 Elizabeth Street South.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Erin Zagar, Z-A-G-A-R, on 76 Mill Street South, Brampton. I'm here representing my clients with regards to a 2-story addition on the side of the existing dwelling where a 1.8 meter setback is required. We're asking for a 1.2 meter. Side yard setback for a pergola off of a rear porch. Again, required 1.2, we're asking for 0.4 meters. And to permit a side setback for an existing accessory structure with a pergola attached to 0.6 meters. This property is a reverse pilot, so the impact to the proposed addition on the side is a sliver of the rear portion of the addition. The pergola is going to be open as requested by staff, and the existing shed with pergola at the rear, we will be addressing, possibly tearing down the pergola portion or submitting for a building permit. We've reviewed all of the requirements from staff, and we accept all conditions.
Okay, that's good. Any question to the applicant?
No, Chair.
Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? None? Staff, could you please begin your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application was reviewed against the 4 tests under the Planning Act and found to be supportable, subject to the following conditions: that the owner shall obtain a building permit for the existing accessory structure within 60 days of the final date of the committee's decision, or within an extended period of time as approved by the Commissioner of Planning and Development Services; that the extent of the variances be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice; that the pergola portion of the roof patio, as shown on the sketch attached to the public notice, shall be of an open-style construction and shall not be enclosed; that the open roof deck portion of the accessory structure shall remain of an open-style construction and shall not be enclosed; that drainage from the proposed addition, open roof porch, and the accessory structure be contained on the property, and drainage on adjacent properties must not be adversely impacted; that the applicant shall make an application to injure or destroy trees on private land for trees that are greater than 30 centimeters in diameter and are to be removed or may be damaged as a result of construction on the site; and that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void. Thank you.
Okay, that's already acceptable to you, right? So looking for a motion to proceed?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve with conditions by Mr. Nars, seconded by Mr. Stockler. All in favor? This is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Calling application A18153, Syed Hamid Ali. Property is located at 12 and 18 Beach Street.
Hi, my name is Richie Khanna, and I'm representing the owners at 12 Beach in regards to a second-story addition.
So your name is?
My name is Richie Khanna.
Okay.
From R&R Designs.
Yeah.
So we have a application in for 4 minor variances. One is required the front yard setback. Second one is interior side setback as well at 0.8 meters. And we also have a reduction in parking stalls and an aisle width as well from 6 meters versus 6.6. I believe these requests are minor in nature, as there is an existing structure and we're dealing with an existing building which requires the existing setbacks.
Did you get the chance to review the staff report?
I did, and I'm okay with all the conditions as we move pretty far along in the site plan application. Reduction to parking, we want to give the school a bigger playground, and that's was one of the intent of reducing parking as well. So.
Okay. Any question to the applicant? Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? None? Staff, would you please bring your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this application was reviewed and found to be supportable, subject to the following conditions: that the owner finalize site plan approval under City File SP 18-030.000, execute a site plan agreement and post any required financial securities and insurance to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services within 180 days of the committee's final decision or within an extended time period, a period of time as approved by the Director of Development Services. That the applicant shall update the approved parking study to reflect the requested reduction in parking within 30 days of the committee's final decision or within an extended period of time as approved by the Director of Development Services. That the extent of variances 1 and 2 be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. And finally, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void. Thank you.
Okay. As you already indicated, you are in agreement with these recommendations?
Yeah, I just have one quick question. If I needed I know you mentioned 180 days for the site plan approval. If we needed a little bit more time, is that we could grant that? If needed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant, yes, provided that the request is made prior to the 180 days, we can potentially grant an extension to that 180 days.
Okay, perfect.
Okay?
Yep.
No further business. Looking for a motion to proceed?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. Nurse with the conditions to support staff's recommendations, seconded by Ms. Doppler. All in favor? It's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Calling application A18125, Goreland Investments Limited. Property is located at 5 Yorkland Boulevard.
Hello again, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Arlie again, planner at Glenshar and Associates, and we are the planning consultants for Goreland Investments, so owners of the subject property. The original application for minor variance for the subject property underwent internal review by staff and relevant agencies. Resultant of this review and further discussions with staff, we have requested deferral of the application to address outstanding comments, wherein GSAI, in conjunction with the city staff, have since revised the original variances, which are listed on the agenda. In the interest of time, I can cut to the chase and say that I believe that the application meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and I have read the staff recommendation reports and have no objections to the proposed conditions.
Okay, thank you. Any question to the agent so far? None? No one in the audience?
Crickets.
Okay. Security, any question? Anyway, I have a letter by Mr. Frank Crumpton with sharing some concerns about parking and number of parking are already less, and it's not about minor in nature. So for the record, I'm including that one. Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff are in support of this application, subject to the following conditions. So number one, that the extent of the variances be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. Two, that the owner finalize site plan approval under City File SP 17-078.000 and execute a site plan agreement within 120 days of the final date of the committee's decision or within an extended period of time as approved by the Director of Development Services, and that upscale landscape treatment be provided to screen hydro transformer from Glorway Drive. Landscape details shall be confirmed through site plan approval to the satisfaction of the Director of Environment and Development Engineering, and that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void.
Okay. You already said you're in agreement with these recommendations?
Yep, accept.
Okay, no further discussion, looking for a motion. Motion by Mr. Offler and seconded by Mr. Nurse. All in favor? Yes, this is approved.
Right, thank you.
There is one more application, but I believe no one is here.
For the record, I'm recalling application A18140, TriCav Investments Limited. Property is located at Bomars Drive and Queen Street East.
So, Ms. Myers, if no one is here, should we move into the next meeting? What's the standard procedure, or until someone contacts you?
It's through you, Mr. Chair, it's at committee's discretion. Normally, when somebody doesn't show for a hearing, we do include it with the following agenda. So perhaps we could accommodate this for October 23rd. I'll be in touch with the applicant or the agent, and go forward from there.
Okay, so do we need a motion to proceed? So looking for a motion to proceed. Probably we can add into the next meeting because there's no discussion on this one, and I can see the positive staff report as well.
Motion for next meeting.
Motion by Mr. Nurse to add in the agenda in the next meeting, which is going to be held on October 23rd. Seconded by Mr. Stopper. All in favor? Approved. And now, if no further business, looking for a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Motion for adjournment by Mr. Nurse, seconded by Mr.